بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على نبيه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. So this will be our first halaqah, our first gathering in this book, which is titled Sarf lil-Mubtadi'in. Sarf, morphology for the beginners, which is authored by Nawas al-Hindi, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. And we will start, inshallah, from the beginning of the book, page number 5, where the author, he says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Muqaddimatun fi ilm al-Sarf. Introductions into the science of Sarf. Al-Muqaddimah al-Ula, the first introduction, معنى الصرف لغة واصطلاحا. The meaning of Sarf, linguistically, as well as istilahan, from the standpoint of the terminology, which was decided by the scholars of this science. So this science of Sarf, it is a science from the sciences of the Arabic language, where, as it will come to us inshallah, what is discussed and studied are abniyatul kalimat, the structures of words, and how these words, they change from one sigha, one form to another form, the benefits that we gain from it, the things which are learned from this. And there are many benefits which are taken from the studies of this science. From the benefits of studying Sarf is, first and foremostly, a person gains a makana, an ability, in order to understand the Quran and the Sunnah correctly. And this is the greatest goal of any talib. So this science is considered to be from ulum al-ala, the sciences which qualify a person in understanding the Quran and the Sunnah correctly. Also from the benefits of studying Sarf is حفظ القلم واللسان أو صيانة القلم واللسان من الوقوع في الخطأ, to preserve the tongue and the pen from making mistakes. When the person writes sentences or pronounces words, then this science, by way of being skilled in it, mastering it, there are less and fewer mistakes which occur upon the tongue. Also, what is gained from this is التفريق بين الكلمات العربية والأعجمية, being able to distinguish the words which are from the Arabic language and words which are not from the Arabic language. A person also is able to memorize the Quran correctly, preserving it from al-lahan wal-akhta', the mistakes that may land upon the tongue, by way of understanding the structures of the kalimat, the words, and their forms, which they take. Also from the benefits of this is understanding the different scales in the Arabic language. As from the beauty of the Arabic language and its preservation is that words, they land on different scales, and we'll get a better understanding of what is intended by these scales as the lessons inshallah go on. But a person will be able to understand a meaning of a scale and what he will gain from that. So if I was to take a verb from a 3-letter scale, such as fa'ala, like dhahaba, to go, and then put it on the scale of af'ala, adhhaba, the meaning of the word would now change from going, dhahaba Muhammadun, Muhammad went, to Muhammad caused someone to go, adhhaba Muhammadun al-walad. So if we were to write this, for example, ذهب محمد, يعني Muhammad went. And if you were to say أذهب محمد الولد, Muhammad caused the boy to go. The meaning changes merely by adding this letter to the beginning of the verb, this hamza. And they have differed with regard to who the wadi' was. The wadi' meaning the person who introduced this science, the first one who discussed the science of Sarf independently. Some have said it was Mu'adh ibn Muslim. Mu'adh ibn Muslim, who was a scholar of the Arabic language, who died 187 years after the Hijrah. Ibn Nudaym, he mentions about him من الفهرسة, that he did not write or author any books, or there are no books which are known to be attributed to him. The point being from this brief introduction is for us to understand what Sarf is. It's a science from the sciences of the Arabic language, and we've listed some of the benefits in studying this science. And some have mentioned that the study of grammar, Nahu, which most students study, they say that the study of Sarf should be before the study of Nahu. Some have mentioned this. The reason being that in Sarf, the study is al-kalima bi-asriha, yani looking at the word from the beginning of it to the end of it. So you're studying in dhahaba, you're looking at the dhal, you're looking at the ha, and you're looking at the ba, and you're putting it on a scale like fa'ala, for example. And as for when you're studying grammar, then you're studying the ends of the words. This is fi'l madi, a past tense verb, mabni al-fath, which is constant on the fatha. You will say Muhammadun, he's a fa'il, marfu', so I'm looking at the ends of the words. But if I was to look at the word Muhammad, then from Sarf I'm looking at the word Muhammad entirely, from the beginning to the end of the word. So you have the meme, which is taking the dhamma, you have the ha, the fatha, the meme with the shadda, also has a fatha on it, وهكذا. So Muhammadun would be on the scale of mufa'alun, which is ism maf'ul. So they say because grammar is studying the ends of the words, and Sarf is studying the entire word from beginning to end, to study the entire word and get an understanding of it is of more importance. In addition to this, they have also mentioned that the alaqa, or the irtibat, the connection that the grammar has to the Sarf is much stronger than the connection of Sarf to the grammar. Meaning that if you are studying Sarf along with the grammar, then the need for you to, if you're studying Sarf, if you're studying the grammar along with the Sarf, then your need as a student of knowledge for the Sarf along with the grammar both together is very important. As opposed to a person, for example, only studies the grammar, then he requires the Sarf in order to strengthen his grammar. As you will need to know what the ism fa'il is, the ism fa'il, the ism maf'ul, and the effects of the ism fa'il and the ism maf'ul when we're looking at the grammatical placings of the words in the sentences as they come. And this is an important matter. And you find people who give a lot of concern to the grammar. If they're not well grounded in the Sarf, they frequently or at times make mistakes. At times they will make mistakes. Even if the person is well skilled in grammar and not skilled in Sarf, there will be mistakes which will happen due to the attachment that grammar has to the science of Sarf. So the point is that a student of knowledge should give concern to both of the sciences, the grammar along with the morphology, the Nahu and the Sarf. They should all be given their due right and importance, along with the other sciences of the Arabic tongue, whether this is the balagha or the adab or the imla, and the other sciences which are there. As a person, the stronger they become in these sciences and the more grounded they become, the more qualified they are, and their understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah also strengthens. So we'll continue. The author, he mentioned a sarf ويقال التسريف. You will say sarf and also you will say التسريف. So this science in the past, sarf, if a person was to go back and look at the books which are authored by the mutaqaddimin, the scholars of the early eras of Islam, you would find that the sarf and the nahu, they would be studied alongside each other as one science. If you were to go back to the books which were authored then, they would write the science of sarf along with the science of grammar in one book. Then to make things easier upon the students, and also as a development within the science, making it an independent science, sarf, and an independent science called grammar, there was more studies which were given to each science individually, and books were compiled like that. However, in the past, then they were written together. جيد. So the author, he says, coming back to his speech, الصرف ويقال التصريف, you say صرف and you also say التصريف. طيب. And whether you say صرف or whether you say التصريف, then they are one and the same. You say I'm studying صرف and I'm studying التصريف. Some have mentioned like difference between the two of them. But inshallah, as our studies continue, maybe we will mention that as a benefit. ومعناه في اللغة, he said, and looking at it from a linguistic standpoint, then what is intended is التغيير والتقليب, a changing and an alteration. Linguistically, it's a changing and an alteration. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned to us when he said, just from the part of the ayah, the shahid being, وَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مِن مَاءٍ فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا وبث فيها من كل دابة وتصريف الرياح والسحاب المسخر بين السماء والأرض. To the end of the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when mentioning some of his signs, he says subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what Allah, he has sent down from the heavens from water. فأحيا به الأرض بعد موتها, and he brings the earth to life after its death. وبث فيها من كل دابة, and he sent forward from it, and he sent forward جل وعلا within it the earth, كل داب, every animal which walks the earth. And then Allah said وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ, and the changing, the alteration of the winds, and this is from his signs. And he also mentions in Al-Aṭīyah وَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مِن رِزْقٍ فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ آيَاتٌ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. And what Allah, he has sent down from the heavens as provision, and he brings the earth back to life after its death, after it becomes barren. وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ, and the changing of the winds. These are signs for people who have intellect. So linguistically, the sarf, the tasrif, is a تغيير, a changing. وَمَعْنَاهُ فِي الْإِسْتِلَاحِ, and looking at it from al-istilah, this is looking at it from the scholars of the science of sarf, what they have termed a sarf and a tasrif to be. He says معناه في الاصطلاح أي عند أهل علم الصرف, meaning among the scholars of the science of sarf, he says is تغيير في صورة الكلمة, it is a change and alteration in the form of the word, لغرض لفظي أو لغرض معنوي. This change and alteration is either for a benefit or a gain, an interest have you, which is lafzi, which returns back to the actual letters, or لغرض معنوي, or returns back to the meaning. So there is a benefit and gain which a person will achieve from the studies of sarf. This will either return back to the letters, or it will return back to the word itself. Now he's going to make this clear by striking examples. He says مثال الغرض اللفظي, the example of an interest which is لفظي, returning back to the letters of the word. مد أصله مدد, the verb مد, which was essentially مدد. مد was مدد. طيب, if we're to look at this, so we have the verb, he's telling us مد, with the shadda was essentially مدد. So what happened here? How did مدد become مد? In Arabic and in the science of sarf, you find what they refer to as al-idgham. Al-idgham, which is the merging of two letters. Now the Arab, if they would find two letters which are of the same type, one followed by the other, then they would not leave it in this case except in certain scenarios. But essentially, to make it lighter on the tongue, they would eliminate the haraka, the vowel on the first letter, so it becomes sakin. Then they would merge those two dals together, and it would become like this. Now this shadda on top of the dal is an indication that there are two dals, there are two letters here of the same type. That's what the shadda indicates. So this is referred to as al-idgham. And whether you were to say madda or madada, there would be no difference in the meaning. But in terms of the letters of the word, then they have changed, because you have now eliminated the haraka, which is the fatha, and placed the sukoon in order for this to become easier in pronunciation. So this is غرض لفظي. مثال, he says مثال الغرض المعنوي, an example of the غرض, the objective and gain, which is معنوي, returns back to the meaning. He says علم يعلم اعلم alimun, ma'lumun. So he lists, I will just mention a few of them. Alima, then you have alimun, then we have ma'lumun, for example. These are examples of a verb and then two nouns. Now when you change this verb alima to alimun, then you change it from alimun to ma'lumun, and obviously you're going to be changing this because of again that you want, which will return back to the meaning. There's an interest that you have in the meaning. So once you're changing the word from scale to scale, from form and structure to another form and another structure, if your objective is to change the meaning, because the meaning of alima is a past tense verb, he knew. Alimun is the one who knows. He is the fa'il, the doer of the action. You have ma'lumun, which is the maf'ul, the one that the action landed upon. So each time I use a different one of these words, even though we see that the ayn, the lam, and the mim, they're present in each one of those structures, the changing of these through these scales, this creates a different meaning. So this is a gharad, a benefit and a gain, which a person achieves, which is ma'nawi. It returns back to the meaning of the word. This is what is intended by al-gharad al-ma'nawi. So either the change would happen in the structure of the word for merely the letters, the meaning will not change, or the change will occur to the meaning of the word as it changes from scale to scale. Now the author goes into another muqaddimah, another forward into the subject. They said, al-muqaddimah thaniya, the second forward, aqsamul kalima thalatha. The categories of a word are three. So words in the Arabic language, they will return back to one of these three categories. And there is no word in the Arabic language which will exceed these three categories. They must be one of the three. And the proof for this they mention is al-istiqra. Al-istiqra wa tatabbu'. And you would have scholars in the past that in order to perfect the Arabic tongue, they would spend years among the Bedouin, those who speak the purest form of the Arabic tongue, in order to gain from them knowledge in the Arabic language. So with this effort being given, along with following meticulously, going through the Arabic language, they found that the words in the Arabic language will be one of these three categories. Okay? One of these three categories. The first one is ismun, a noun, مثل like Muhammad alimun sayyara. Muhammad alim, let's call it sayyara, is a vehicle. And they have defined the ism. We'll take this definition. The ism is ما دل على معنى في نفسه ولم is ما دل على معنى في نفسه ولم يقترن بزمن. Some may say instead of ما, they may use the word كلمة here in the place of ما. كلمة دلت على معنى في نفسها ولم تقترن بالزمان or بالزمن. There's no real difference in the meaning. If we're to translate it, the noun in the Arabic language, a noun is, we'll put here ism in brackets. Al-ism, the noun, is a word that indicates a meaning within itself and is not connected to any time period. And what they intend by indicating or pointing towards a meaning, any word that gives you a full meaning, a full picture of what it is without being connected to time, then this is a noun. So if I was to say to you, for example, let's take some examples of nouns. قلم. We all know what qalam is, the pen. قلم, كتاب, رجل, a pen. When you hear the word qalam, you envision within yourself, or instinctively there comes to your mind a picture of that tool which is used to write with. Now that tool which is used to write with is it connected to the past tense, the present tense, the future, a command, for example? It's not connected to any of that. So this is how you will be able to identify a noun from the standpoint of the meaning. It points towards a meaning within itself and is not connected to time. Likewise, if I was to say to you, kitab, a book, the book indicates a meaning. When you hear the word book, again, you will visualize that what is used for reading. For example, you can all picture a book as opposed to al-majalla, for example, a magazine, or al-jarida, which is a newspaper. Each one of these terms, when we hear them, there is a vision or image which comes to mind. And this image which comes to mind is not connected to any time period, past tense, present tense, command, it's not connected to any of that. Likewise, rajul, a man, the meaning is understood and it's not connected to any time. So this is what is intended by the ism. Then the author says, fi'lun, a verb. So we have al-fi'l. The verb he gives examples in مثل علم قرأ درس. Like علم, he knew, قرأ, he read, درس, he studied. Now the definition of the fi'l will be, again, ما دل على معنى في نفسه واقترن بأحد الأزمنة So the definition of the verb is ما دل على معنى, that which again indicates, points towards a meaning within itself. واقترن, but this time it's connected to بأحد الأزمنة, one of the time periods, of one of the three time periods. بأحد الأزمنة الثلاثة. طيب. ما دل, that which indicates على معنى, a meaning في نفسه, within itself. واقترن, and is connected to بأحد الأزمنة الثلاثة. It's connected to one of the three time periods. So what are these three time periods? These three time periods, we'll mention them here. They're ماض, there's a past tense verb. You have مضارع, which is the present tense of the verb. And you have أمر, which is a command verb. Okay, so the past tense is ماض, the present tense is مضارع, the command is أمر. The verbs in the Arabic language do not leave these three states. It's either going to be something that happened in the past, or it's happening now, or it's happening in the future. Now the author has given us examples here of the fi'l. All of the examples which he mentioned, they're all past tense verb. He knew, he read, he studied. But if you were to make them present tense, for example, alima, you would say alima, that's past tense. You would say ya'lamu, which is present tense, and then you would say i'lam, which is a command verb. Now the command verb is future tense as well. This is because they look at the zaman at-takallum, when the verb occurred in relation to the time that the person spoke. So for example, if that action happened before the person spoke, then it's going to be past tense, and it's this category here. If the action is happening while the person is speaking or in the future, then they'll say it's present tense, يعلم. And if the action happens after you speak, i'lam, know. When will the person know? You're telling them to know after you speak, then this is considered to be the command, which is a future verb. So this is the difference between the verb and the noun. The noun is not connected to time, but the verb is connected to time, and they both have a complete meaning. What is intended by the complete meaning? That when you hear alima, He knew. There is a complete meaning, an image of knowledge which a person will envision or will come to mind. So if you were to say, for example, ذهب, he went, or يذهب, he's going, there is a going which a person pictures. Now this going and this departure is connected to one of those three time periods. So if you have to say ذهب, it's past. If you say يذهب, it's present. And if you have to say اذهب, then it's going to be considered future tense because it's happening after you speak. The third type of kalima in the Arabic language is harfun, which is a particle. Al-harfu, which is the particle. He gives examples مثل في يا هل. في يعني preposition حرف جر. في يا is حرف النداء, used to called. هل is حرف استفهام, used to ask a question, make an inquiry. So the harf is also ما دل, that which indicates a meaning. ما دل على معنى في غيره. Now there's a slight difference when we speak about the harf. They will say about it وما دل على معنى في غيره. What does that mean, في غيره? في غيره, harf, it indicates a meaning. But this meaning is only complete when something else attaches to it. Something else follows this harful jar or this harful istifham, this particle used for inquiry. Yani the harf, the particle on its own may indicate something, but what it indicates is not going to be fully understood until something else connects to it. That's what is intended. So if you were to say hal, hal is used for asking a question. Hal, is or are may be interpreted depending on what follows. If you were to just remain silent like that, all the person understands is there's some form of istifham, there's a question. But when you say hal anta Muhammad, are you Muhammad, when something else connects to it, then the picture becomes complete. So they indicate something, but the meaning of that which they indicate will only be complete when something else attaches itself or follows that particle. That's how we can identify a particle. And some have said that the particle, each one of these, by the way, they have their signs by which they are known, which are studied more in grammar. So there are signs by which the noun is known, there are signs by which the verb is known, and there are signs by which the particle is known. And they discuss this in detail when it comes to the science of nahu, grammar. And they have mentioned that if the signs of the noun and the signs of the verb are not found in the word, then it is a particle. طيب تنبيه هنا, notice لا يدخل الحرف في علم الصرف. The particle will not enter the science of sarf. The particle will not enter the science of sarf. Why is this? Okay, let's go back to what we've taken as a definition. What we've taken as a definition of sarf. So far, sarf was defined as a changing. Is that not the case? It is mentioned تغيير في صورة الكلمة. It is a change in the form, in the structure of the word. لغرض لفظي أو لغرض معنوي, for an interest which returns back to the word, or a gain that you may have in the meaning of the word. So it's a gain in the meaning or a gain in the letters. Now, looking at that, if the particle does not change and it remains in a single structure, like fi, like hal, like bal, like bala, all of these letters and all of these particles, their letters do not change. They remain in the same form. So you benefit from this, that ilm al-sarf, when studying sarf, it does not deal with the mabniyat, words which are constant. So the harf will not enter, and the mabniyat, words that do not change, will not enter, illa shaddan, except if it's an irregular mention, or there is an interest, but for example, something which is found upon the Arabic tongue, or the Arabs of old that they used, but is mabni. So for example, they may say huna, the tasghir of huna, hunayya. Huna meaning here, they may shrink it and say hunayya. Now this tasghir, the shrinking of the word, this is from the science. It's an aspect from the aspects of the science, which is a tasghir. In order for a person to shrink something, you may be able to do this in the Arabic language. So you may say رجل, a man, and shrink the man and say رجيل, a small man. Now that shrinking which is done to the word, it's called in the Arabic language التصغير. I'm just mentioning this as an example as to a word entering into the science which is not from it. التصغير is shrinking, it's its own chapter in Sarf. Now you may find words that will enter into this, but they're mabniya. They're words which are constant, they don't change. Now why do they enter into it? They enter into it because of what they refer to as a shulud. It's left the norm and is an irregular entry into the science because the Arabs of old, they use this word, so they entered it into the science. But essentially, in order for a word to enter the science, it must be either a fi'l which is mutasarrif, now we'll discuss the words that will enter. The verb which it changes, past tense, present tense, maybe a command. The verb, if it changes, it will enter into the science. And also we have al-ism, al-mutamakkin. So these are the two that will enter into the science. I'm just going to get rid of this tasghir because it was just an example, but it has no real connection to what we're in the course of now. So what will enter into sarf? What is studied in sarf is one, al-fi'l al-mutasarrif, and two is al-ism al-mutamakkin. Now, al-fi'l al-mutasarrif, we mentioned, the verb that can change. It has a past tense, has a present tense, has a command. Sometimes the verb will have a past tense and a present tense. Sometimes it will have a past tense, present tense, and a command. And most times it will, right? But if the verb only stays in one structure, for example, the verb laysa. Laysa, this is a verb which only remains in the past tense. It's not going to enter into sarf. And you have al-ism al-mutamakkin. Al-ism al-mutamakkin is not the mabni. There's two types of tamakkun, al-mutamakkin al-amkin, or mutamakkin غير أمكن, and then you have al-mutamakkin, la mutamakkin wala amkin, which is the mabni. So as long as it's not mabni, like for example a noun which is mabni, you have that. That is mabni. It's a noun, but it's mabni. It will not enter the science. And if you find anything like that which is entering into the science, then its entering is considered shadh or min bab ash-shudud. Shududan. Yani this entry is irregular. It's an irregular entry into the science. So we want to take from this what we study in sarf. We've eliminated the particles, we've eliminated the verbs that do not change, we've eliminated the nouns which are mabniya, which are constant and do not change as well. All of this will depart from the science and we're left with the verbs that will conjugate and change from structure to structure, as well as the nouns. طيب. Inshallah, we will suffice ourselves by what was mentioned, and in the coming halaqah, we will start on the third muqaddimah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to benefit us all by what was mentioned. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.